So today we're going to talk about failure, not most people's favorite topic. In fact, when I ask students who wants to fail, for the most part, nobody puts their hand up. So it's not that we want to fail. The question is more, how do we deal with failure? And that's really what I'd like to talk to today, that point. And I'd like to start with what I call the good news and the bad news about failure. So I often say, if you have bad news, tell me first, because if it's bad news and I know about it, I can do something about it. Where if it's good news, tell me next week. If it's still good news, it's probably really good news. However, today I'd like to talk about the good news about failure first. And the good news about failure is you don't have to worry about failure. Stop using your valuable time, of which you don't know how much you have, worrying about failure. Worrying about failure looks a little bit like this. Highly unproductive use of your time. Now, the bad news about failure is failure will find you. Failure will just walk into your life, sit down next to you, put its arm around you and say, "Hi there, my name's failure, what's yours?" Or have any of us never failed? And that's the obvious answer is no. We all fail. We're going to fail. And where are you going to fail? Well, if you go to school, you're going to fail in school. If you start a company, you're going to fail in your company. If you take a job, you're going to fail in your job. If you get married, you're going to fail in your marriage. If you have a family, you'll fail with your family. If you have kids, you're going to fail with your kids. Wait till they're teenagers. You're going to fail your friends. And most of all, you're going to fail yourself. So given that you are going to fail, the question is not, do I want to do this, or do I not want to do this, or no, I don't want to do this because I might fail. Yes, you are going to fail. The question is, how are you going to be when failure shows up? Are you going to be like the oak tree in the storm, where when the lightning bolt comes and hits the oak tree cracks in half, falls down, and never gets up again? Or are you going to be more like the bamboo, which in the same storm, when the winds come, blows also all the way down to the ground, but when the storm is gone, the tree comes back up? And that's why a lot of bamboos look like this. In fact, a lot of entrepreneurs look like this too. So the question about how is it that you deal with failure and how you're going to be when it shows up is a much more powerful discussion. And the problem about failure is that failure is not polite. Failure does not walk in, knock on your door and say, "Excuse me, would you have time for me right now? I'd like to spend a little time with you." Failure just barrels into your life in all sorts of different ways that you're not expecting. And those things go all the way from terrible things happening like death to small problems where you can't get along with somebody. So given that the spectrum of failure is so wide, we want to set up something that allows us to deal with it in all cases. And this is what I call an automatic system. So I have, and I'd like to share with you today, something which I call an automatic system for dealing with failure. And before I tell you what it is, I'd like to explain to you what I mean by an automatic system, because it sounds a little too good to be true. It's very simple. It's a little bit like this. I know myself, and one thing I know about myself is that I hate to get up in the morning. So what I do is, every night I take my alarm clock and I put it down the hall in the bathroom in the shower. So there's a shelf in my shower, and every night I put the alarm clock on that shelf. Now, why do I do that? I do that because I know in the morning when I don't want to get up, the alarm is going to be ringing. My wife is going to kick me. She's going to say, "Go turn the alarm off, please." I'm going to walk all the way down the hall. I'm going to reach in the shower, and my hand is going to be right next to the water. And it's going to be so much easier for me just to take the alarm out, turn on the water, and take one step, and I'm under. And as soon as that happens, everything is fine, and I go on with my day. And it works every single day. So that is an automatic system. Now, an automatic system for dealing with failure would be the following. If I had to sum up my 32 years of entrepreneurial and business experience in one sentence, the one sentence would be, every breakdown is the opportunity for the breakthrough. Now, that sounds like a very nice, perhaps American euphemism that people like to say, but why is that sentence, every breakdown is the opportunity for the breakthrough? Why is that an automatic system? Well, there's one word in that sentence that's very, very important, and the word is every. If every single time that something goes wrong, your attitude is, where is the breakthrough? I'm looking for it. I know this is not what I wanted to have happen, but I also know that there's a breakthrough in here. Are you going to find it every single time? No, you are not. But it's going to dramatically change the way you look at and feel about and deal with failure, because you're going to be looking for the breakthrough. And when you come back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that failure doesn't ask your permission to come in, failure simply barges in, you don't get to choose. It's not like you get to say, oh, I like this failure, I like this breakdown, and therefore I'm going to solve it, but I don't like this problem, and therefore this is a real one, and this is failure, and oh my God, what am I going to do? The fact of saying every time that something comes and is not what you wanted to have happen, that you actually look and you say, this is a breakdown, now I'm going to start looking for the breakthrough, puts you in a completely different mindset about how you're going to get there. So the question about, do I want to fail? Do I not want to fail? Am I going to fail? Things that stop us, those conversations are very, very limiting. They put us in the frame of mind not to think about what does success look like, not to think about how am I going to get there, but to think about, oh my goodness, look what happened to me. This is something which is debilitating, which stops us from moving forward. And by the way, this is something which other people feel. And people are looking to see, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and people are following you and looking to see how you deal with situations, that when they say, oh my God, failure, what do I do? As opposed to, we have a challenge, we have a breakdown, now let's find the breakthrough. Not only does it change the way you deal with it, it changes the way your entire organization deals with it. I hope this is helpful. So the second thing I'd like to talk about in a little bit more detail is, how do you recognize failure? How do you find it? What is it that you're looking for? And interestingly, I see somewhere around 500, 600 business plans a year, and they all look exactly the same. The way the business plans look is, we're now at A, and where we're going to be is B. And how are we going to get from A to B? Well, very simply, like this. How else would you get from A to B other than this? So the graph always looks the same in all the business plans. Now the problem is that when reality comes into the picture, the graph looks a little bit differently. Instead of going like this, the graph looks a little bit more like this. What's my point? My point is, you can get where it is you want to go. You can get from A to B. The problem is you can't get there the way you think you're going to get there. And so when things start going wrong, the question is going to be, where are you going to be? How are you going to be, what we talked about before, when you're down here? How are you going to be when you're over here, when this is where you're headed? So one concept that I'd like to bring out is the idea of time, and time being parallel. A lot of people have this concept that time is serial. So I want to start a company, so first I have to get an internship, then I have to get a good job, then I have to make some money, then I have to meet the right people, then I'll have a good idea, then I'm going to start my company. A, then B, then C, then D, then E, and so forth. What I'm saying is, probably not the way it works. Maybe the people you need to do what it is you really want to do are right around you right now, to look into the moment and to see time is parallel. Who's to say you can't study at the same time as you're starting a company? There's a great saying which is, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who has a lot to do. And there are people who have this incredible sense of productivity, and you look from the outside and you say, how do they do all that? And part of the way they do it is They look and they look at time as being something that's parallel, going on at the same time. Now, given that if things are going on in parallel, lots of things are going to be going wrong in parallel, what is it that you really need to focus on? What I like to say is when I look at a business plan, I look to see what are the critical errors in the business plan. So my definition of a critical error is the one error which, if you make that mistake, the entire business doesn't work. So let me give you a very simple example. You decide you're going to sell a product, you go out and do your market research, and you find out that the product will sell on the market for 100 euros, $100, will sell for 100. And now, since you want to make a lot of revenue, you can't sell all those products one at a time yourself. You need to actually go to a distributor. And a distributor is only going to sell those products if you give him or her a discount. And you do your business plan and you write in that you're going to give a 40% discount. So 100 minus 40 is 60. That's your revenue. You do all your costs. Your costs are 50. Isn't that great? 60 minus 50 equals 10. And 10 over the 60 you get is 16% profit. What a great business. A critical error would be you get out into the market, you've raised money, you've opened an office, you've hired people, you've built your product, and you find out that there's not a single distributor in the market that would even consider selling that product for less than a 60% discount. And that's the critical error. You got the discount wrong. It's not 40, it's 60. And now when you do your calculation, 100 minus 60 is 40. All your costs were correct. You got all that right. But 40 minus 50 is minus 10. And minus 10 over the 40 that you have is, guess what? 25% loss, and essentially you're out of business. So how do you avoid critical errors in your business? And how do you avoid critical errors in your life? It's by doing what I call a reality check. By actually getting out into the market. And this is what the whole lean startup movement is about. It's not about long, detailed plans. It's about making something, getting out, trying it, finding out if it's right. If you think you want to be an attorney, why don't you go get a job this summer in an attorney's office? If you think you want to start a company, why don't you go work with a startup for 6 months? Come to an entrepreneurship center, get involved. If you want to be a social entrepreneur, go spend some time with some social entrepreneurs. Find out if the reality of what you believe you want to do is the same as what the world shows you. Go out, do reality checks, look for failure, don't be afraid of it. When you find it, you'll see it's definitely the opportunity for the breakthrough.